Hi everyone, Joseph Anthony here, and welcome to Conversations with Supernatural Kids. And on the other line, as you can see here on the other side, is the one and only Maria Heller. Hi, Maria.
Hi, Joe. How are you? How exciting to kick off this show.
I
Something
know.
new for YouTube.
Exactly. When we had this conversation at your house a while back, I think we both got excited about the idea of talking about some of these amazing kids that are out there. And I know you have a few grandkids and
Right.
you've seen a few. And so what a great opportunity to talk about what this all means to these kids and what their purpose is here. And so this should be interesting. I'm looking forward to this.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Uh, it's interesting to me because, I have taught children before, especially when I worked at the Desert Center here in Scottsdale, Arizona.
Hmm.
And it was the most fun I ever had is talking to kids, especially little kids, even 2-year-olds. And I think that a lot of parents don't realize how different and how special these kids are, and that they need a whole different way of upbringing
Hmm.
than a regular kid. And that's what I'm going to
Absolutely.
call them, regular
Yeah,
kids.
absolutely. And we're going to talk about some of these qualities. For instance, psychic ability just through the roof, sensitivity through the roof, not wanting to fit in. I mean, they are just like in their own little worlds. And, I had a conversation with your granddaughter as well, and she's part of that generation. And just today, as a matter of fact, I had lunch with two ladies that have kids in this category, and it's just incredible the stories that I'm hearing from them as well. And so, obviously, every generation has a certain ability, but this generation, those born from 89, 90 into the 90s, seem to have more of an advanced quality in all of these areas. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's like they came in without any veil between them and spirit worlds, which is very evident from how many stories do you see lately posted about children coming in with full recollection of their past lives?
Oh, absolutely. And as an astrologer, I could tell you, this is the generation that comes in under the Pluto and Sagittarius generation. Now, Pluto represents the transformation, and Sagittarius is sort of a higher philosophy, a higher understanding, a more evolved symbol. So this whole generation is coming in with this heavy spiritual influence and philosophical view of the world that it almost seems to be more advanced than the average person.
Oh,
And
absolutely. I think they're the generation we've been waiting for.
totally. Because when you talk to them, they seem to not like belong here or like they've never been here before. You could see it in their eyes. They're so awake. A lot of them unfortunately have a lot of trouble sleeping. As we were saying, the dream state and the psychic ability is just going through the roof on these kids. And so it's very difficult to adjust when you're hypersensitive and you're at a higher frequency and you're
Right.
coming to a place like this so-called prison planet,
Planet of the Apes.
right, on Planet of the Apes, where everything seems to be slower or backwards and people seem to have amnesia 24/7. Yeah.
I listen, I totally agree, but the shame is for these kids, and I really want to stress this show is for you kids. Okay, this is a safe space. We wanted to create a safe space for you to talk about the things your parents ignore you for or put you down for, the bullies at school kick the crap out of you for, or they want to label you and put you on some kind of psychotropic drug because you don't just mindlessly obey. And these kids, they see the world for what it really is. They're rejecting all the systems. And that's how another way of seeing how special they are, especially a lot of them in the millennial generation. They reject religion, they reject racism, prejudice, so many things, even our monetary system. That's another way of knowing that you're part of that extremely special soul group that came
Hmm.
to this planet to literally fix it.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And they seem to stick together, much like the kids born in the 80s, the kids born in the 90s. They instantly recognize another spirit or another soul that's just like them. And that's wonderful because they're connecting with like-minded. And I mean, this is a generational thing. but they could see it and they could sense it beyond their abilities. The other thing about this generation that I'm sure you've noticed, Maria, these are the daredevils. How many
Oh,
have you watched those videos with the kids with the skateboards and the flying and the
right.
bicycles?
Right. They
This
all
is
think they're Evil Knievel,
right
and they
because
are.
yeah, because
They are.
their spirit is just wants to soar, you
Well,
know?
that's another thing I want to say for you kids listening. This is our first show, so I want you to understand the reason we're doing this is so the next time we do this, you guys can come on here and talk about your experiences. You don't have to be on camera. If you need explanations, you want somebody to listen to you because one of the other common denominators, Joe, is these kids feel very alone and they want to fit in, but they know they just have that feeling of being alone, but they're never really truly alone. So I want this space to be a space where these kids can connect to each other.
Absolutely, great point. I mean, this first show, we're obviously going to talk about the qualities. We're going to talk about, and we have a caller towards the end of the show, Maria, that's going to chime in about her grandkids, I believe. And we're going to have more people chiming in. We want you folks to talk about this and bring it out. Any experiences you've had, the dreams, the astral projecting, leaving your body and seeing the entire galaxy and the world for what it is. We want you to share your information. You don't have to give us your real name. That's
You
you're
don't
not
have, there's no charge.
right,
You're safe. You can
right.
keep your anonymity. We're not going to judge you. What we want to do is help you kids get the answers you need that the average person around you is not going to be able to give you.
Exactly. So please contact us. Obviously, on the video here, you'll see my email address, Maria's email address. You can always find us on Facebook, our websites, the whole 9 yards. Please reach out to us. We want to hear from you guys. If you were born after the 1990s, or if you're a parent of one of these kids, or a grandparent for that matter, we
Mm.
want to hear from you because this is way too important not to ignore. So
Right.
let's talk about some of the appearance of these kids, Maria. Have you noticed their eyes? Okay.
Well, I notice their eyes are usually translucent. I find them, a lot of them, to be extremely tall
Mm-hmm.
and slim,
Mm-hmm.
uh, but they have an energy about them that almost makes it like you're looking at somebody that's there but not there. They're almost translucent.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that they've already achieved a certain amount of their light bodies.
Absolutely. Well, could you imagine being that awake or that conscious of everything, and you're trying to live in a physical world, and yet you're seeing all this other stuff beyond that? I mean,
Oh, yeah.
it's got to be difficult, especially with this energy amping up right now. I don't know about you, but the psychic ability is going through the roof.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
Not just myself, but many others. And so these kids already have that state of awareness. It's just in them. And
Mhm.
the sensitivity is just incredible as well. They seem to be more happier, or they
Right.
seem to be more content. I mean,
Or they have maybe the other end of the spectrum,
right.
extremely depressed, extremely nervous, distrustful. And a lot of that, I think, is just their uncomfortableness
Hmm.
being on a planet where there's so much dark energy. And they pick up energy really well, these kids.
Oh, yeah. But you see, the thing that I don't know if they're aware of is how much power they really have, how much power we all have, for that
Oh,
matter. You
absolutely,
know,
absolutely. And I wanted to share this, Joe, just so the kids that will watch this in the future and consider joining us. I want them to know that when I was a little girl, I had nobody offering to do exactly what we're doing, but I was extremely gifted, which was like a blessing and a curse. And it was a long time ago, kids, okay? And I was slapped for it. I was punished for it. I was degraded for it, bullied for it, called terrible nicknames, this and that. Everything from you name it. Especially my favorite one was the Antichrist because it sounded so dirty in Italian when people would call me Mala Cristiana.
hmm
So I didn't have anybody to ask. I didn't have any teachers, and it made it extremely difficult because the older I got, the more intense my spiritual events were happening, and it was very scary for me. So today, I'm sure there are kids out there that feel very scared if they hear a voice outside their head. All of a sudden, they just snap out of body, or they're having a vision. In our society, the first thing they're going to do is put you in a mental institution or try to drug you down. But there's a big difference between having a spiritual experience and a mental breakdown.
Hmm.
So that's really why I'm so excited about this show is to give to kids what I didn't have. I don't know what your experience was, but I
Hmm.
know mine was not pleasant. I tried to run away from it 3 times in my life and it just came calling back. So I was like, okay, if this is it, I might as well go with the flow.
Well, I could relate to that because I was having premonitions, and I remember them about 8, 9, 10 years old. And this is, something that I've only talked to in front of some close friends, but I had premonitions about speaking in front of large groups of people. And I had no reason at that age to understand or comprehend why I was seeing that. You
Hmm.
see? And so I would have visions of things to come. I remember seeing computers before they were actually created. I remember this was like 1970 something, 78, 79, and my visions of talking to your television screen were coming up. And it was the weirdest thing. And so, but I was accessing information that was in the future. And so I kept seeing, and we all have these abilities, and that's the amazing thing. I need to point this out. We all have these abilities. We're all connected to this source, and it's in us. And so, of course, I would absolutely agree with you. At a young age, we start having these experiences. And I think we have them before the age of 13. They're more enhanced, they're more aware, we're more awake because we haven't had any interaction. We haven't had as much interaction or change in the body. The physical chemistry of the body begins to
Right.
change at about 7 to 13. And so we're not distracted, we're not interrupted with the constant flow of information. And this is why these kids see the boogeyman, they see beings, they see UFOs, they see dark stuff, whatever. And so this is normal. There's nothing wrong with you. So, obviously we want to hear about these stories, and I'm sure we're going to hear some amazing stories, Maria.
Oh, I'm sure of it. I hear them, quite often from, my clients or kids that I meet, and I
Hmm.
just seem to meet a lot of young people.
Well,
And they really always have the one commonality. I finally have somebody I can talk to.
Well, let me share this story with you because it involves one of my clients and their 7-year-old son. And she was telling me, and now she's pretty awake, she's pretty aware. Her 7-year-old son, and this is a few years ago, had a 7-year-old friend next door. And she was doing the laundry, had the window open, and the kids were talking about where they were from in the constellation. And she
Wow.
dropped her laundry basket and was in awe that these kids were talking about where they were from in the constellations at 7 years old. How's
Hmm.
that? I mean, she was in
I
total
hope she
awe.
wrote it down. I hope she wrote it down. I hope she
Right.
videotaped it. Listen, this is one thing that, well, there's a couple of things I always advise new parents to do. Number one, get an astrology done for your child so you
Hmm.
know how to properly raise that child according to their
Hmm.
astrology. As you know, I refer a lot of people over to do exactly that.
Right.
But with these kids and the parents of these kids,
Hmm.
if you're a kid who is old enough, keep a
Right.
journal, date it, and write down what you were getting, and then look in the future after some time passes. See what you were right about. See what you were wrong about. See how much time it took from the premonition or the dream to the reality. And if you're a parent and you have a child who at 2 years old is telling you about what life was like when the dinosaurs were on the planet, which I have a client who does, write it down, keep a journal for your child. So when they're 18 and the world and this system has whipped away a lot of that innocence and knowledge, you can hand that kid that book and say, here's the kind of things you talked about as a child. So you can bring all those memories back and their intuition will just zoom off the chart.
Oh, I totally would agree. You could even use videotaping these days because every phone seems to have a video recorder of some
Yeah,
kind.
I still believe in paper and pen just
That's
in
okay.
case the EMP happens. I don't
Hey,
want to lose everything.
however you want to record it, folks, just do it. But I totally think that's a great idea. The other thing is because we have technology and we could go on YouTube and other sites and see these kids who recall their past lives. They're so vivid,
Right.
so clear, and then their information turns out to be 100% accurate. You know?
Exactly. One of the best books, I think one of the earliest books ever on reincarnation was that of the Middle East, and it was called A Case for Reincarnation. I forget who wrote it. But this little kid, I mean, once you read that book, there's no way you could ever doubt that reincarnation happens. Of course, remember, try to reincarnate in one of those other constellations those kids are saying, because there's not too much intelligent life down here.
Right? Isn't that the kid that remembered he was killed and he remembered who killed him? Was that the one?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Another big case that was so famous, I don't know, maybe in the 30s or 40s. I don't know if you ever read the book, but there's a movie out on it. A Case for Bridie Murphy,
Okay.
where this 30-year-old woman, she gets into some kind of an accident, and while she's out of body or whatever, she sees her whole family, and I guess it happened in Ireland.
Hmm.
And she was still young enough that a lot of her children were still alive.
Wow.
So she travels to where her children lived in some dipshit town in Ireland, right? And she tries to convince them that she's the mother, but it was one specific motion or move that she made that her like 70 plus year old son
Hmm.
recognized that this is their mother. So here they are all in their 70s and their mother's 30. Uh, but these kind of stories, you see them all the time.
Oh
And the
yeah.
other thing, I know you post a lot of these prodigy kids, 5-year-old girl singing opera like nobody's business, is some kid that just kind of falls out of his mother and all of a sudden he's like Beethoven, right? Well, I think those kids come in without any loss of their memory or their talent, you
I would
know.
have to
So,
agree.
and I'm sure there's plenty of kids out there watching this that I want them to identify with what we're talking about today, because this is really for them. So they can say, oh, you know what, that happens to me, or I fit in. And gee, I like these two people. They look innocent and safe. You know, we're not going to trade your information with the NSA or anybody. Uh, but to me, you know, I know it sounds corny, but I'm sure you remember that song probably from the 60s, The Children Are Our Future.
Hmm.
And these kids coming in, they can see there is no future unless they create a better one.
Absolutely. Getting back to what you were saying about singing, they seem to have a common theme as well with music, and they seem to be able to just pick it up very easily. And since you and I and many of these viewers, I'm sure, are aware, everything is energy, everything's a frequency. And so they seem to be able to grasp notes and frequencies very easily. And music is nothing to them. It's almost like too easy in a sense. With a little bit of practice, they become professionals, if
Mhm.
that's what their chosen paths are. And so, again, getting in alignment with what is real and what is not. And
Right.
so, music is definitely part of it. Look, all I could share, I could say, and we've talked about this, Maria. There's a great awakening occurring. One of the
Hmm.
main reasons these kids are here is to help with the awakening process.
Well, you know
Okay.
me, I've always said that the only people that have ever changed this world are artists, musicians, and poets. So I'm
Absolutely.
not surprised that these kids come in so gifted,
Mm-hmm.
but they're also vibrating at a much higher rate than the average programmed down, you know, animal laden products, heavy bodies,
Mm-hmm.
everybody trapped in their own hell here. And these kids are coming in as light as a feather, probably dreaming about flying every single night, feeling constricted in their physical body.
Yep.
And I think that that makes a huge difference,
Well,
even in their choices, their personal choices. They're not even buying into materialism. You gotta love it.
yeah, exactly. I could easily relate to that the flying dreams. I remember as a kid, getting back to that, I used to have tons of flying dreams where I left my body and I was just floating around in total euphoria and bliss. And that is absolutely real. That is the spirit lifting out of its body and astral projecting to other realms of consciousness. But
Right.
the other thing that I find amazingly interesting, and I have some friends who are younger, they're in their 20s or so, they kind of fit this bill, and
Hmm.
they're experimenting with drugs that are about other realities, like DMT and
Hmm.
mushrooms. I mean, I just had this conversation the other week with a young guy. He's about 22. He goes, yeah, we've been trying different things, and I remember leaving my body and seeing the Matrix and seeing, and they're having a conversation as if, wow, it was an amazing experience. I got to see what the other side really looks like. And
Right.
I'm not advocating drug use here, but it was incredible that they instinctively know which drug to go after, that's going to enhance this psychic ability, or they're going to be able to see the other realms of consciousness. And
Hmm.
just an amazing story. I'm going to ask him if he wants to be on the show as well. The young guy that I know, and he's pretty grounded and realistic, and he's not really a drug user per se. He's just like, I needed to try it for some reason. I needed to explore what this was, and it really opened up a doorway to what he saw. And he was telling me all about it, and I says, "You're right on track." And then
Right.
you
But
know,
I always appreciate the kids who get there without it.
oh, absolutely,
Okay,
absolutely,
listen, when I was a younger person, I used to make my living painting watercolors. And I had a lot of friends in Soho in the art district in New York.
hmm
I had a one-woman show there, and you meet a lot of artists. Listen, the drugs are flowing in the artist community. I mean, flowing like nobody's business. And yet, every last one of them said to me, they were all, "Don't give any to Maria. She's crazy enough without it." So that I used that as an excuse, and it kept me kind of safe from a lot of, addiction and whatnot that was
sure,
happening then. But what I couldn't understand is, and even reading Castaneda's work, because for me it just didn't compute. I said, but I can do all those things without the drug. Why do they need the drug? So I believe the majority of these kids are so gifted that the last thing they're going to need is a drug. Maybe, if they were 30, 40, 50, where they're so bogged down and closed down by this matrix, maybe that's the only way they can get, from here out there.
hmm
But these kids they're vibrating way higher than us. They're healthier than us. Their brain, I think they're using more of their brain than we did.
sure,
And another commonality they all have is if I meet a kid who just graduated high school or college age, they will all say the same thing. We were not educated for life. We don't know anything about the system. They don't know how the system works. They don't know how money works. They don't know anything.
hmm
So that's a deliberate trying to dumb them down. But these kids are too smart for it.
good, good. I'm hoping they, they latch on to the Bitcoin and the virtual currency. Get
Maybe
rid
they'll make their own. Maybe they'll go back
exactly.
to trade.
Exactly. But the other thing I wanted to share with everyone is that we are going to give you techniques on how to enhance your psychic ability and how to tune in on a regular basis. And it takes practice like anything else. Wouldn't you agree, Maria?
Oh,
Practice makes
absolutely.
perfect. And so
Absolutely.
they were actually simple techniques, nothing really complicated about it. But I would stress that you're going to need to learn or understand the signs and the symbols of what your subconscious mind is going to show you, because it's not always going to be vivid pictures and clear perception of reality. Uh, Symbolism is going to be very important. Dreams and dream interpretation is going to be very important.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, so
Physical feelings are important.
mhm,
How many times do kids says, "Ooh, that just gave me the chills."
sure.
Oh, the hair on my arm is standing up. Well, a lot of times that's confirmation from
hmm
your own intuition that what you're getting, you need to pay attention to.
Right, and trusting that feeling that you get in your gut or in your heart. Those two areas seem to be the strongest for decision making. It's not so much the brain. The brain is just an antenna with its pineal gland up there, and it's a processor. It's just like a computer
Mhm.
chip.
Right.
A real good one, but
Right.
it's not where you're making decisions. You're making them from the gut area and from the heart. The solar plexus in the
Right.
middle here, and so you're going to have to learn how to trust that. And so, when you meet one of your friends that you know you have a connection with, what are you trusting? You're trusting in a feeling. You're trusting in a gut instinct. It's the same.
Absolutely.
It's the same thing for psychic ability, intuition, premonitions. You guys, this whole generation has premonition ability, for a year, 2 months, 3 months down the road, because there
Mhm.
is no such thing as time. I want people to understand that time is a man-made device. It's just
Right.
a way
It's
of
just
measuring things.
construct. It's just another piece of this construct.
Right.
So why get too stuck on it?
Exactly, exactly. So you just gotta sort of learn the ins and outs of human nature, understanding the symbolism behind it. Of course, I'm an astrologer, so I'm basically studying cycles. If you're going to do tarot cards or numerology or any of that stuff, it's just a symbolic language for understanding things. It helps enhance the ability even more. But if you learn to trust your instinct and your
Right.
psychic and your dreams, you will excel even faster. For instance, if there's something you really want to know, just ask. Ask yourself. Show me how I need to do this. Show me what my next step is in this evolutionary process. I really do believe, though, Maria, that these kids are going to be the conduit between us and these other beings from other places, the
Oh,
ETs.
I don't know. I kind of believe they are the ETs.
Well, yeah, I think
Okay,
we're all ETs.
there's a there's a whole lot of kids from a whole lot of constellations in human bodies, obviously, right now.
Absolutely.
The commonality we have, we are one, is because we're all wearing the same spacesuit or meat suit, whichever way you want to
Right.
call it.
Absolutely.
But we certainly don't all come from the same place, and we're not all going back to the same place either. So,
No.
to me, they're as alien as you and I are.
Well, I know about you, but I'm sure you've experienced this as well. I mean, I never felt like I fit in. I felt like, what is this world? What the hell is this place?
I felt like that. Listen, I'm sure you heard the story. When I was 4 years old, growing up in Brooklyn, I was running across the street and I got hit by a truck. And I pretty much died, okay, for all intents and purposes. And one thing I remember, which is interesting, I don't remember anything before the age of 4. But one thing I remember once I came to and I was home, besides having a patch over my eye, it was the first time my mother wanted me to go outside and play. And when I first went down, we called it the stoop, which was the staircase to the brownstone we lived in. When I went down the stoop and I looked left and I looked right and I looked across the street, and it was not even a blade of grass, not a tree, not a bush, not a blade of grass, just more and more brownstones, people stacked on top of each other. And I remember, and the bubblegum stains on the sidewalks, because in New York, I may forget about it, right? And I'm looking at all of this, and all I was maybe 4.5, right? And the first thought that came into my head was, this isn't the way we're supposed to be living. I was shocked by seeing it as if I saw it for the first time, which I probably did. I said, and where's all those wide open spaces I see on TV or in Westerns? And then my next question was, where am I? Who are these crazy people claiming to be my family? And how do I get home?
Hmm.
And that's a question I had asked myself from the age of 4. So there was a knowing that I didn't fit in, but nothing here made any sense to me. And that was in the 1950s. Today, it's totally
Oh,
out
yeah.
of control. But I'm sure there's a lot of kids out there that feel the same way, who could just look around and say, this is wrong. This isn't the
Hmm.
way it's supposed to be.
Hmm. Absolutely. And, I'd say a lot of them are doing a lot of traveling as well. I've noticed they're exploring, and I mean physical traveling, going to different cities, different places, and this is common. But they seem to be drawn to places that they either were before subconsciously, and they're easily brought back there, and they quickly start remembering things, and
Oh,
they
yeah.
want to explore places they've never been, you know, weird places, which is it's all part of the journey, but
Right, but a lot of times it's, listen, I've always told people the places you love the most and the places you hate the most, the food you love, the food you hate, they're all indicators of past lives, and not all your past lives were good.
hmm
Because if they were, you would have wised up and not come back.
yeah,
That's my other thought. You
this
would have
is
said,
true. This
oops.
is true.
Oops.
The other thing I've noticed, Maria, is that some of these kids at a very young age are talking like adults. Have you
Oh, yeah.
noticed that you can have a conversation and they're two
Oh,
years
yeah.
old, 3 years old, and they're talking like adults?
Right.
Have you noticed that too?
Well, I've noticed that for a while. Okay. I mean, there's more children now, percentage wise, doing that. But even the kids coming in the 70s,
Hmm.
there was no baby talk.
Right.
Okay. Like even with my own son, he never said goo goo gaga. Okay. When he started talking, he talked in sentences,
Mm.
and he just seemed to have an unnatural command of language. These are signs, okay? When other kids are 2 years old and they're just spitting out mama dada,
Hmm.
that's your big clue. Not that your child has anything wrong with them, but they don't have anything special about them either. So there you go. Grandma's voting in on that one. Uh, and I watch kids, I watch them as they grow because you want to see any little sign, is this kid waking up? Is this kid awake? What I do find is most infants are so awake, I don't even know how their parents can take it. And I'm talking about infants that can't even talk or walk.
Hmm.
But you look at these babies coming in, and their aura is huge, and their brightness in their face, and they always zero in on my eyes, no matter where I am, Joe,
Hmm.
supermarket, whatnot. This other kid last week, she looked like she was 6 months old. She was yanking on my grocery basket to beat the band, and then our mother saw it, and like most parents,
Hmm.
went to pull the kid's hand. I said, "Leave it." She and I are having a moment,
Hmm.
and we were having a moment. We were having a little
Nice.
fun exchange. So parents, if parents are listening to this, when your kid talks to you about imaginary friends and his hopes and his dreams and his wishes, don't say that's imaginary. You need to change that, because you start to cripple that kid's soul and you start fitting them in that prison box of the matrix that he's going to be stuck in, and develop a heavy duty phantom self where he can't ever reconnect with his higher self, with his universe, with his constellation, wherever, whatever.
Hmm. Could you imagine if we brought these kids up understanding how the world really works, who we really are, and enhancing their ability?
Well, we don't have to imagine it. That's why we're doing this show.
Well, exactly.
I mean, this is a gift to them. Listen, it's Friday night. There's a lot of things I'd like to be doing too. So, but what could be more fun than looking for, the children that could one day have been ours in a different time and space?
Hmm.
I truly believe that all souls that meet each other in this one particular lifetime are from the same soul group. So I'm looking for the rest of my soul group, and I don't expect them to be my age.
Right.
Okay, not necessarily.
Sure.
Okay, because we have multitudes of families, not just the one we're born on this planet with.
Absolutely. When we understand how the matrix works, we're all connected, every bit of it. And so to say that we're not family, it's almost insanity in a sense. We've studied near-death experiences, and you know that when you leave, you have a life review, and you realize you're connected to everything. So,
Absolutely, and it's quite the life review. Well, you know what I've been asking people to do lately, and it might be too much for somebody 18, although I don't think it's ever too early. Why wait till you're dead to do your life review? Get away for a day or two where you can be all alone with your thoughts and review your life up to now.
sure,
And if you don't like the way your life is going, change it. Okay. You don't have to
absolutely.
wait till you're dead to do it. I did that about maybe 10 years ago, and it was amazing. But I spent 3 days doing it. The good, the bad, the ugly. What would you do again? What would you do this?
Hmm.
And what lesson did you learn? And what do you want for the rest of your life? What don't you want in it? It's a process. So instead of adults saying, "Oh, I'm having a midlife crisis," why not make it a midlife reevaluation?
Absolutely. And spending quality time by ourselves is how we connect with the source. It's already in us, it's in every cell of our being. And so, nature, very powerful. So, if you guys are listening to this, go out in nature and just don't think, just be. Be in alignment
Right.
with
And
the
leave
source.
your gadgets at home.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
There's no Wi-Fi in the forest, but you do get a better connection.
That's right.